back, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the second plenary session of this conference, and it's focused on all things European security, European defense, and European defense industry. So Europe clearly has awoken, as was already sketched in the first panel, and there is serious momentum in both raising defense investment and strengthening the EU's defense industrial base at the same time. But the classic questions of overcoming fragmentation, overcoming cross-border barriers in Europe are still relevant. And of course, the question of how should European partners finance and structure defense investment to get the best return for the euro. And to tackle these questions, we will begin with a keynote speech by Commissioner Andrius Kubilius, the European Commissioner responsible for defense and space. Commissioner, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot. Labdien to everybody. And really, it's pleasure and honor to try to say a few words about really a very important topic about strategic investment in the European defense industry. But I would like to start from trying to speak a little bit broader, because definitely, in the panel, financial people will speak very precisely about financial investments. I'm always saying that besides financial investment, we need to look into what I call intellectual investments and political investments into our defense readiness, into our defense industry, and to see a little bit all things in a broader picture in order to understand what we need to do. So I will try to run through my notes in a quite a rapid way. But I will start from very simple things in order to understand why and how we need to invest strategically. We need to again and again repeat ourselves what challenges we're facing. And definitely, it's very clear that Russian aggression, challenge of possibility of Russian aggression during the next 3-5 years is one of the major moving forces of our decisions. And that is opinion not of politicians, not of Commission, but of intelligence services, of big EU member states like Germany and other countries. And that is why our strategy is called Defense Readiness 2030. But besides this, understanding that Russia, with its war economy, with its battle-tested experience in Ukraine, can wage real war as we understand the war, aggression, we need to be ready also for what we have seen recently, more and more intensive provocations, what I would call below Article 5, but really very dangerous, with drones or with something else, what they will find to use. And definitely, again, here we need to be very dynamic in predicting, in moving ahead. And sometimes I'm saying, well, it's now a very popular topic, how to build drone wall after the last provocations. I'm saying that in order to build drone wall, first of all, we need to destroy old wall in our mindset. Because the question which I am getting now everywhere is very simple from experts, from media. So where have you been last 3 years when drones started to be used in Ukraine very, very intensively in the war, and we were not developing our defense capabilities inside of European Union countries? And really here, I can congratulate Latvia that you are, as I understand, today we had good conversation with Defense Minister, you are one of the front runners. But where were all others, So that's really a question which we need to also to have in mind. So that is why, in some way, we need to, that is why I'm talking also about political investments, about intellectual investments into our understanding what are possible threats and how we need to change our approach, our decision-making in order really not to be late in what is really very much needed to be done in order for us both to be ready to defend and to deter. Second challenge is a longer-term challenge, which we need also to have in mind, is possibility that our transatlantic partners, United States will start to diminish their presence on the European continent, will start to shift to more and more towards Indo-Pacific. Well, we do not have, some kind of clear understanding what will be their decisions, but if you read their discussions, it's obvious that, from one side they're asking us to take more of responsibility on our shoulders on European defense. From another side, they are really looking how to mitigate Chinese rising military power. And I would say again here, we need to be rational, not emotional, and it would be good for us to have some kind of clear, practical, and rational agreement with the United States about how we are and when we shall be able and how we shall be able to replace their capacities, which they are now using to defend us. And that should be also our very important strategic direction. Maybe we can agree that nuclear umbrella will stay with the United States, but everything else we need to be ready to replace. And here comes a question about our investment priorities. And that is why I would say that investment into what is called strategic enablers, both space capacities, also heavy airlift capacities or command and control systems, which are very crucial for our ability to defend ourselves, and where we are, for the time being, very much dependent on American resources. That should be one of of our priorities at the moment. So if we see those challenges, then I can say my own opinion what should be our strategic goals in defense. Again, a little bit broader view. First of all, ramping up our European Union defense capabilities, which, first of all, of course, always we're speaking about what I call material defense capabilities. But when we're talking about our defense capabilities, I am always saying that now it's our priority, material defense capabilities, NATO capability targets, production, procurement, financing of those capabilities, but also we need not to forget about the challenge for us to have also institutional defense capabilities, to see into the future, especially if Americans will diminish their presence, how we shall organize ourselves on the European continent inside of NATO, but with clear European pillar of NATO and things like that. Second goal is creation of conditions for peace in Ukraine. And the third one, I would say, long-term sustainable peace in Europe, looking into much longer-term perspective, how we can live without the permanent threat from aggressive Russia. So those are, in my view, some kind of strategic goals, strategic directions, which we need to keep in mind when we're talking in a broader way about our security and defense of Europe, and our responsibility to defend peace on the European continent. To describe shortly where we are with our strategic investments, I can try very briefly again to say that during this year, we are making good progress with our investments into European material defense readiness. And very soon, next week, we shall have an important strategic plan, the roadmap on defense readiness 2030. And during this year, we did a lot to create financial and legal opportunities to develop our material defense readiness. We created a lot of new possibilities, both we as EU, also NATO, with pledges of member states to spend up to 3.5% into real defense before 2035. We created what I call sometimes big bank of finances to be used to ramp up our defense production and procurement of new defense systems. We adopted omnibus on defense simplification. A new package on military mobility is coming. Also, new communication and important documents on transformation of our defense industry is also on the way. But we can see also still what we need to do. I will maybe later on, I will speak a little bit more in detail about this material defense readiness. But now I want to say a few words about issue of peace in Ukraine. and the need for us to have, again, very clear plan, European plan, how we can assist, or how we can look into possibility of peace in Ukraine, not only waiting that President Trump, before he will get Nobel Prize, will do something important in that area. He's doing a lot, really. I am serious, but it looks like that those efforts are not bringing the outcome which we would like to see. So, in order to look into this topic, peace in Ukraine, and what kind of investments we need to look for, we need to, first of all, to look a little bit back into what we managed to achieve and what we managed to do with our support to Ukraine during those 3 years of the war. We need to understand that, well, we did a lot, definitely. It's not nobody can deny. We as Europeans, as European Union, we invested into Ukraine defense capabilities 60 billion euros during 3 years of the war. Americans did the same. But if you will look how much it means per year, it's 20 billion per year from EU side and from American side. And it means that from EU side, we were giving a little bit more than 0.1% of our GDP. Americans were giving less than 0.1% of GDP. And I'm always repeating that, when we are pledging, and I hope that we shall achieve, that we shall spend 3.5% of our GDP for our defense, but we are still, investing only 0.1% into Ukraine defense. Something is wrong with our strategic logic, and that is why I see really it's very important to see that with a clear eyes, clear sight, what is the situation, and that is why I hope that possible European Union decision on the reparation law to spend, Russian frozen assets immediately to support Ukraine can be so important, sending a signal that Ukraine defense will be strengthened by the entire amount of Russian frozen assets, and maybe that can finally convince Putin that he will not achieve anything substantial in his war against Ukraine. Of course, besides that, we are looking also that member states will use opportunities now created by the mechanism of safe loans to use at least part of those loans to support Ukraine, and that would be also very important. Now, why I was speaking about the set strategic goal, what we need to do in order to live with sustainable peace, which means without the threats from aggressive and authoritarian Russia. Because in my view, even now we are suffering that we do not have any kind of longer-term strategy on Russia. And well, I will not expand here, while talking about financial investments, but that brings really a lot of hesitation and obstacles when we are talking even about our support to Ukraine. Because from one side, we are afraid that if we shall support Ukraine more, then Russia will retaliate, will escalate. And second is also, you can feel that in some capitals there is the fear that if Ukraine will be supported substantially and Ukraine would win, on the front line big battles, that can destabilize the Kremlin regime, and that will bring general chaos to Russia, and then the fear who will control nuclear arms is coming in, and that is what becomes an obstacle and brings hesitation on our side. So that is why really it would be very important for us to have much more clear longer-term strategy, but that we shall discuss maybe in different on different panels. Now, if to come back a little bit again to our strategic financial investments into our material defense capabilities, as I said before, a roadmap which is coming next week, and then I hope it will be supported by European Council, is really very important document. And when I'm talking about this roadmap, I'm always saying very simple things. In my view, till now, we were creating opportunities for member states to develop their defense capabilities. Financial opportunities, legal opportunities, defense industrial opportunities. Now we are moving into what I would call delivery period. And in that delivery period means that we need to move into contracts, into production issues, into procurement, and similar things. Of course, into financial side also very much. But first of all, we need also to have in mind three questions when we're talking about delivery period. The first question is what to deliver. The second question is how to deliver in the most effective way. What, who is going to do what about institutions, very important for us to understand. And the last question is how to finance what I would call big bang in delivery. On the first issue of what to deliver, the basic principle is clear. NATO capability targets recently agreed between NATO and member states are the basis for planning what needs to be delivered by 2030. But in order to understand what are those NATO capability targets, I can remind what NATO Transformation Commander Admiral Pierre Van Der have said. And out from his very simple numbers that new targets will be bigger by 30% or up bigger by 30%. But also the previous targets from 2021, we are not implemented also by 30%. Simple arithmetic is saying that now we are at the level of 50% of the new targets which we need to have in order to deter Russia. So job is quite clear and big job. And what to deliver can be again divided into three distinct groups of weapon systems which need to be produced or procured. First of all, production in a bigger amounts of legacy systems. What we are producing now. That's very clear. So, and here we need to look, do we have enough of production capabilities? So if we do not have, then we need to look how to increase those capabilities. Second, development of European new systems, defense systems, which are in general produced globally, but not in Europe. For example, deep strike capabilities. So from one side, we shall procure those capabilities from those who are producing, for example, from the United States, but from another side, we need to develop our own capabilities. And the third group is what I would call modernization or modern weapon systems, which need to fit into modern war doctrine. And here is exactly Ukrainian lessons are very crucial. Those are answers to the question what to deliver. And again, I would repeat, that among those broader, items of what need to be delivered, we can see again very important topic of strategic enablers. And second very important topic is flagship projects of regional or European scale, including Eastern Flank Watch and drone wall, which are very much needed for the countries, frontier countries, but also the same capabilities to defend ourselves against drones are very much needed in all the member states because provocations can happen without big difference of where the country is located. On the second issue, how to deliver in the most effective way, really the challenge is to find the appropriate balance. What role in the management of big bang delivery should be played by member states, by Commission, by European Defence Agency and the EAS and High Representative. And here I see one issue that member states have strong historic convictions that defense is a matter of national sovereignty, and they want to keep all the decisions on the development of European defense in their hands. But sometimes it makes it difficult to go for more centralized planning, for more joint procurement for European defense level, and which can be achieved only if European Union institutions will play a more active role in the delivery stage. So, and also what is very important, that more centralized and European approach is also very much needed in order to overcome structural problems of the European defense industries, which is very much fragmented because of fragmented defense policy, lacks single market principles, and makes European defense industry less competitive in the global market. So while developing our defense capabilities on national level, we should not forget issues, structural issues related with European level of our defense industry, where the challenges were very well described by the famous Mario Draghi report. On the third issue, how to finance a big bank of delivering defense, I'm suggesting, first of all, to look at what we have at the moment and what is coming in financial terms. Well, first of all, of course, now on our table is the issue how to implement the mechanism of safe loans. 150 billion euros were requested by member states, even more than we were expecting. So now, at least, we can forecast that starting from next year, those money will start to reach member states. There is a whole procedure, but I hope that really those money will reach member states very soon. National escape clause also, which was requested by 16 member states. Our forecast is that it will allow around of 650 billion euros of additional national defense spending to be materialized till 2030. And in general, I'm always trying to show to our communities the general picture of the finances, what we can foresee now. If all the pledges, all the good wishes which were declared would be implemented. So, as I said, only safe and national escape clause is bringing 800 billion euros additional funding to be invested till 2030. And in total, it's very easy to calculate. It means that, till 2030, we shall have around of 2.5 trillion euros invested by European member states into defense. Of course, not all the money will come into real defense. Salaries and pensions are also financed from those allocations, but quite a big amount of money will come. And if we are looking into a longer-term perspective, for example, next MFF, period 28-35, so it's very easy again to calculate, forecast that around 4.2 trillion euros will come into defense, if in average 3% will be spent by member states at that moment. So next MFF, we proposed 5 times bigger defense and space spending. So, and again, it's quite substantial. Of course, there will be discussions with member states about next MFF. I hope that defense really will feature as important spending, and that is again very important. But if we compare 4 trillion from national defense spending and more or less 50 or 60 billion for defense without space from MFF, so we need to see that national defense spending will be 80 times bigger than what we shall have in MFF. So again, what is the biggest responsibilities and biggest resources? And here comes again the question of EDIP, which we hope next week we shall finalize trialogue, because EDIP is exactly for us next MFF possibility to use MFF money for EDIP type programs and to incentivize member states to go for joint procurement, to spend more of their money, national money for European production. And I would remind that the whole chapter also in this EDIP is devoted to Ukraine. And also we need to remember that national defense spending is not regulated at all. So when somebody is criticizing that EDIP is too much, orientated to European production, they should remember that EDIP is taking quite a small amount of money. I will try to finalize my remarks on question, what are the opportunities for a region of frontier countries, of Baltic states, and I would say just several factors which I think are important. In my view, defense will stay as a key priority for European Union for next 5 to 10 years. Strengthening defense capabilities on the frontier eastern flank countries will be one of the key priorities during that period of time for EU defense policy. Eastern flank countries have the benefit of learning from Ukraine and from doing defense together with Ukraine, and learning not only about modern defense technologies, but also how to build a modern defense ecosystem, which is crucial. And regional projects like the drone wall and Eastern Flank Watch will have I hope, will have a status of European flagship projects, and they will be developed together with Ukraine and learning from Ukraine on the importance of localized production of drones and electronic warfare instruments. And startups, of course, should be considered as engines of modernization, as we can see that in Ukraine. And we can, again, use recently established platforms like Brave Tech EU, which we established together with Ukraine, really to learn a lot from Ukraine. So Baltic states, frontier countries, have all the possibilities to be in the lead as promoters of defense modernizations. Perhaps tanks will continue to be produced in Germany, but production of drones, electronic warfare systems, can concentrate itself in Latvia and other Baltic states, because really in those countries we have a lot of capabilities. So I would perhaps finish my keynote remarks with a very clear message. Let's really prepare ourselves for defense. Let's do our homework very much, and let's see how we can strengthen not only our defense capabilities, but also our industries. And specifically in each region, we can develop some specific capabilities which can be very much useful for the whole Europe. Thanks a lot. Paldies.
Ačiū, Commissioner, for the comprehensive analysis and for the call to action. And now we will have a perspective from the financing side, an intervention from Karl Nehammer, who is Vice President of the European Investment Bank. Thank you.
So, dear Commissioner Kubilius, dear Ministers, Excellencies, colleagues and friends, it's a privilege to join you in Riga today for this important discussion on the future of European security and investment. Let me begin by expressing my gratitude to the University of Latvia for hosting us and for demonstrating how investments translate into impact. The building we are in, the House of Science, stands as a testament of EIB financing. The EIB supported the university campus with 2 loans, 30 million in 2017 and 25 million in 2024, to construct modern study and research centers. This is strategic talent infrastructure, a real-life example of how the EIB Group backs projects that matter right here in Latvia. Just as we invest in education and innovation to build Latvia's future, we are equally committed to supporting the country's security and resilience. The European Investment Bank Group is proud to be a long-standing partner to the Baltic states, present in the region since 1993. And we are here to stay. This year, we inaugurated our first office in Riga, ensuring that decisions, expertise, and funds move closer and faster. As Europe faces new challenges, the EIB Group is evolving to meet them. This year, our board of directors expanded financing eligibilities to include projects dedicated to purely military uses, such as barracks, storage facilities, drones, helicopters, radars, satellites, advanced avionics, propulsion systems, and optics, while maintaining strong financing capacity and a robust position in global capital markets. We are closely monitoring the market and have observed growing interest from the sector in our financial offerings. The eastern border of the European Union is especially exposed to the geopolitical risks and hybrid threats, making it all the more important that we channel targeted investment and expertise to reinforce security and resilience where it is needed most. This morning, we signed the Selonia and Kuldiga military base advisory assignment, Latvia's first defense infrastructure PPP. Our role is to support the Ministry of Defense and the state real estate company in structuring, preparing this landmark project, ensuring it is delivered to the highest standards, and it is attractive to both public and private partners. We are doing this with the Cabinet's green light to use PPP in the defense in a decisive step for Latvia that unlocks private capital. Looking ahead, our ambitions are clear. In 2025, security and defense will represent at least 3.5% of EIB group finance, with a pipeline of over 30 flagship operations. We expect approximately 3.5 billion in security and defense signatures this year. 2.6 billion are already signed. We are closely coordinating to ensure that EIB financing complements the Security Action for Europe instrument, maximizing the impact of available public resources at the EU level. By working in tandem with the European Commission, we can mobilize even greater volumes of finance for Europe's security and defense priorities, ensuring that every euro delivers maximum value for our citizens. EIB support focuses on 5 practical avenues: infrastructure and mobility, like bases, barracks, border protection, cybersecurity; industrial scale-up, innovations through venture debt and equity; and sovereign frameworks for defense budget and PPP structuring, as with Selonia bringing private capital and whole life cost discipline. With Selonia, we are not just supporting a project. We are working here in Riga side by side with Latvian partners to deliver real results for Latvia's security and for Europe's collective resilience. More than ever, we need to join forces and adopt a coordinated approach. The EIB group stands fully committed to supporting defense financing and collaborating with our partners here in Latvia and across Europe. You know, it is so important now in these times to deliver security, resilience, and shared prosperity. Today, at the Riga conference, by bringing together leaders, experts, and innovators from across Europe and beyond, we help shape the strategies and partnerships that will define our collective future. I wish the organizers and all participants a truly impactful and fruitful discussion, one that inspires new solutions and strengthens our shared commitment to a safer, more resilient Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Niehammer. It is now time for the panel, which has everything: the regulators, the innovators, and the guys who actually have the money. So with that, I turn it over to the moderator of the panel, Dr. Edward Hunter Christie, who is Political Affairs Director with Hypersonica, and he will introduce the panelists. Thank you.
I'll very simply ask all the panelists to just join up here right away. I think we're a little bit late on the schedule. I'm going to very briefly introduce myself. I'll abuse the privilege of being moderator. Please all take your seats. And then I'm going to give each panelist in turn a few minutes to give their introductory remarks. Please be seated. Thank you very much. So just a few words about myself. So I'm Political Affairs Director for Hypersonica, which is a defense and aerospace startup in the Munich area. We are focused on developing hypersonic delivery systems, ultimately hypersonic missiles. So that's my main activity. And my second activity, I work for a new organization, a kind of strategic consultancy firm based out of Finland, which is called Economic Security Forum. So if anyone later on during the breaks, if you're interested in either of those, either striking deep inside Russian territory or making your economy more resilient, please feel free to come and speak with me. So we have a very diverse panel to talk about defense investment from different perspectives. We have a finance ministry, we have a multilateral bank, we have a major infrastructure company, if I may refer to LMT that way, and we have a representative from NATO, but specifically from the innovation side of NATO. And so we're going to come at the issues from different perspectives, and I'm going to let each speaker just go for your own perspective. I would also like this panel to be a little bit educational because the panel is diverse and the audience is diverse. So I'll ask each speaker to please briefly introduce yourself, because you'll do it better than I could. But please also say a couple of lines about what your organization actually does, and maybe, if you feel like it, you can also say what your organization does not do, in case you've come across misunderstandings in previous speaking engagements. So with that, I am going to proceed in the order of speakers that is given on the agenda, and I will start with Minister Ašerandens, who's Minister of Finance of the Republic of Latvia. You have the floor, please.
Well, first question is very simple. What the Ministry of Finance do? We financing all our efforts regarding defense, and I might say this is a central priority of government nowadays. And recently, government is finalizing work on a budget, and from next year, we're expecting to 5% of GDP to be spent on defense, and of course. We're working on different financial sources how to finance it. One is, of course, budgetary spending, then different financial instruments in cooperation with the European Union, like a SAFE instrument, and another, what was already mentioned with AIB now, this is PPP project. Those are PPP project package, which allows us to finance all the necessary stuff. And we involve directly and indirectly. For example, Minister of Finance are responsible for building of infrastructure, like a border infrastructure and all kind of staff around it, and we will be part of the PPP projects as one of the operators there. Yeah, that is my responsibility.
Jeanette Vittas, please, from the Nordic Investment Bank.
Thank you. So Jeanette Vittas, yes, Nordic Investment Bank, part of the executive management team, and also head of lending, which is our what we do, you could say. We are, you could say, a smaller sister organization to EIB, and we are also owned by the finance ministry, so including also the Latvian ministry. We were established 50 years ago. With a base out of Helsinki. We actually nowadays also have an office here in Riga, but we were based in Helsinki 50 years ago by the Nordic countries at the time, and during a time when these countries were concerned about having a hostile neighbor to the east, and also concerned about an energy crisis. At the time it was oil embargo, but still it's interesting to reflect on that fact, now looking back 50 years later, where we stand today. So 20 years ago, the Baltic countries joined as owners of the bank, and we have, during the decades, we have focused on growing the prosperity of the region. That's our main mission. And that our focus has been on increasing productivity, competitiveness, and also environmental financing projects that also benefit the environment. However, after Russia's aggressions towards Ukraine, we have also questioned whether these investments are really sustainable. I mean, how sustainable are they if we cannot defend them? So we had a conversation with our owners, and we actually had a decision then made by our board of directors last year that we should be able to expand or move the needle to also finance the defense industry. With the only limitation of weapons and ammunition. But it was also decided that we would actually, 12 months later, so in June this year, we should review the policy, which we did. And it was decided that we can also now finance weapons and ammunition, however, only conventional and not controversial. So in that sense, we have, you could say, caught up with the larger commercial banks and financial institutions in the Nordic-Baltic region. But from a multilateral banking perspective, we're still rather unique. I would say it's a testimony of the fact that we have a very close cooperation and a relationship within the Nordic-Baltic region, where all 8 countries basically share the same concerns and also the same ambitions. We have a loan portfolio of around 24.5 billion euros. We pay out in loans around 4 billion or slightly above euros per annum, and sign around 80 contracts. So if you make a quick head count, you can find out that the average loan size would probably be somewhere around 50 million euros. Since we only finance 50% of the project cost, that leaves us with a project, on average, the project would be around 100 million euros. But that's the average. We have a very, very big span. And I think the first defense loans that we did earlier this year really reflect that. So the first defense loan signed was the one with a Finnish wireless communication company called Savox that produces equipment to create secure and efficient connectivity under very difficult circumstances or environments. We financed 5 million euros to support a 10 million euro R&D program, it's something that was very key to us to be able to do. On the other hand, on the other side, just shortly after signing the first loan, we signed a loan agreement with the Republic of Lithuania of 400 million euros, a loan facility to support the budgetary defense expenditures during some years to come. So we have that great span, and we also, in terms of risk taken, I would say that we have, or size, we have a great span. But looking at the risk taking, we're a AAA rated bank. We have a portfolio that it's supported by the asset quality in the portfolio. But we are moving into more risk-taking, and the opportunities we see also with the defense financing area supports this trend. For us, it's important, though, that we also find the right risk-sharing principles. So we are also an implementing partner of the InvestEU program. Which is very helpful to us to also offload some risks from the smaller defense contracts. So that's something that we will also now in this the InvestEU program that we have will also be expanded to cover that type of contracts.
I'll just ask you for 2 clarifications, if I may, for the benefit of the audience. So one is you mentioned before conventional, not controversial, when you talked about weapons programs. But does that mean you finance projects that involve the development and manufacturing of kinetic weapon systems, actual weapon systems?
Yes, absolutely,
okay.
yes.
So,
yes. I mean, we already heard also very well explained from EIB the different types of projects you can finance, as is either whether they are dual use or so. But we have basically, today, we have no other limitations than the controversial weapons.
What is controversial?
Controversial weapons, it could be, nuclear, of course, is part of it, yes. But also landmines, etc. And this is, of course, something that is being debated a lot, how to define this. And it's the Ottawa Treaty that more or less defines it for us today.
So it would only be something where there's an international law problem, essentially. Okay, understood. I think that's very clear. And if I may ask for those in the audience that are maybe involved in the defense industry, what is your front door? If I'm a defense company in this region, how do I go and knock on your door and find out if I can work with you?
Well, the best way is actually just make contact with us.
Just make contact. Okay.
And it's also, I mean, again, everything is also publicized in terms of the transaction we sign, so it's also easy to go in there and see, but definitely the contact. But I would also like to point out that our role is not only to finance. We are, first of all, I already mentioned, we don't have that huge balance sheet, etc. And our purpose is never to finance the full project. Our purpose is to bring other private capital in as well. And what we also then try to do is to facilitate the dialogue. We work across these now 8 Nordic-Baltic countries. We share the insights. We share our networks. We try to somehow assist in making the contacts between different parties. So I think the opening could either come by directly going to us, or via other partners that know about us. Right.
Very good. Thanks very much. I'm going to go back to the minister, to Mr. Ascher-Radens, because you just introduced yourself, whereas, of course, Janet started with her full remarks. So I'd like to go back to you so that you can give your introductory remarks about some of the questions. Perhaps your view, just a couple of guiding questions perhaps would be, what is a smaller state perspective, Latvian perspective, on what can be done from national resources, what you expect from the EU level? Also, maybe a couple of other questions like how is cooperation between the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Defense evolving in the Latvian case? Has it improved? But up to you, please. Take the floor.
Of course, already started with the different sources what we're trying to allocate for financing of defense need, and I might say there is 4, I would say, dimensions there. Of course, the armed forces themselves, equipment, infrastructure, stocks, and then we're coming to the 5th one, that's military industry. And this is a most complicated issue. And number one, what already Commissioner Kubilius mentioned, that is coordination amongst Europe to what, where, and how things should be done. Because there is a lot of ad hoc processes are going on, and we could say it is stabilizing now, and more coordination comes. But otherwise, that is very, very complex issue. And I might say is Latvia, if we define the specialization areas, for example, Latvia showing an excellence in drone area. And recently, last week, for example, Latvian companies show on Salonia training facility shown an interception drones, how they functioning, and understand from Ukrainian experts or others that's extremely extremely good performance of those things. And then common issues to again, how to Latvia leading with together with United Kingdom leading a drone coalition. We supplying systems to Ukraine. We coordinate. We taking our part in production, and of course. For us is very important all kind of European programs that are available, like a SAFE instrument, and with this we can provide financing for companies who are just arriving on Latvian land and wants to do things. And there are 2 types, traditional European industry, what is new emerging interesting process that is partly Ukrainians want to transfer their industry to Europe, and how to facilitate those issues, and as we reach the maximum level, what we can accept ourselves, that is 5% of GDP for armed forces. And now we really, if we want to do something additional, then we're looking for different partnerships. I'm very happy to hear as Nordic Investment Bank is on let's say around the table of negotiations. And of course there are different European financial instruments is very, very important for us to, if we want to facilitate our local innovators and to do things. And second, what is interesting, another where we will look for different European programs is there are interesting processes in universities. Yeah, universities are very deeply looking for innovations there. Again, drone industry, and recently Riga Technical University shown and their ideas and their recent developments there. And interesting as vocational schools, even looking for how to develop programs for let's say secondary level experts in such a technology industries, so they could provide, I don't know, any technical expertise in such things and so on. What I'll put it all together, I'm very happy as Europe is have organized and coordinated process. We're heading towards this, and second is industry is growing very fast now. Yeah, and there's every day are something happen, and we every day have calls to how to finance that, starting from real estate facilities until how to facilitate financing for starting up project, and then of course innovators are the most complex part of it. You never know how much this drone model will be valid for modern battlefield. But again, we have to really look into risks, how to finance those newcomers.
If I may just ask you two brief follow-up questions that, and they're very different from one another. The first is much more political. Your country is moving to 5% of GDP.
Yeah.
On defense. I think everybody knows that in certain Western European countries, getting to 5% of GDP is going to be harder, and that especially the ministries of finance are an obstacle. I'm not going to name any specific countries, but that's how it's perceived. As a minister of finance yourself, and you're going in this direction that your government wants to go into, and obviously you're on board with it, and it's going to happen. How come you can do it and other countries supposedly cannot or don't want to?
Very, very complicated question. And I might put it like this. If you look from a macroeconomic perspective, 2.5% easy, that's what you have to do. And then if you come to 3.5% from GDP, that is you're obliged to do, and so on. If you start to going above, then it's become very complex because then you're coming to the point how to finance in general, and then it's about long-term questions about long-term sustainability and questions about, for example, taxation issues. Our neighbors in Estonia has raised VAT, for example, for 3%, and this bites, to be honest. Yeah, and then it's an overall effect what we have in government spending. Let's say in order to how to say. Guarantee investment in defense, those 5% investment in defense, then you see the other ministries are really start show we have to decrease the level of funding for other ministries, and then it's come to the point where social stability in the country, when discussion appears immediately, education, healthcare, and all other issues are immediately popping up, and this is a very, very complex issue, and I'm I'm very thankful to, in the general approach in society, this investment in defense is needed. We have to manage it. We are trying to find balances between keeping economy up and running, not to threat the general economical growth. Right now, economy are on some kind of takeoff phase, and at the same time, we're trying to balance, let's say, societal needs for different areas and all kind of issues what is appear. And I might say this will be very challenging to defend budget in a parliament. And it's in middle October we will go on this, and I hope we will succeed.
Okay. And just my second short question is: do you have a view in the finance ministry as to the well-known problem of the valley of death? For entrepreneurs, for startup companies, there's often this problem of moving from having a great idea to actually producing at scale and making a profit, and that a lot of companies fail in that in-between space. Is that an issue? Is that a theme in the finance ministry of looking for instruments that can help bridge that gap as part of an industrial policy or what have you?
Yeah, there are two sides, and regarding startup ecosystem, Latvia have a quite good startup ecosystem and environment for financing. It is just, we might say, in a couple of years ago, we had a problem with good ideas. Now we have a hell of a lot of ideas, and now we have to facilitate and help to scale up companies. And I might say for Ministry of Finance, a bigger headache is arrival of let's say significant or big market players who said, okay, we want to launch a facility here in Baltics, and that's demanding X amount of financial resources, and how to solve this. But I might say that to support for innovative startups, that's not the biggest problem. But again, we recently had discussion, I already mentioned, on Riga Technical University, and they have a lot of ideas, but then it's more complex. Who will, the scientists doing their ideas, yeah? But then has to become this has to become a real product on market. Then it's how to materialize that. That might be the issue for how to finance universities with that.
Okay, thanks very much. If you don't mind, I may jump to Ingmar's then and come to Nora at the end, because there was the minister just mentioned an issue of scale, and you're a major national company, and you're also in the Latvian context. So thought maybe it's maybe logical to come to you next for your remarks, and maybe if you could also explain what your company does as its overall portfolio, its background, and how it's moving into defense, and what are the issues that you're facing?
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, yes, my name is Ingmars. I'm from a Latvian major, or the biggest ICT company, historically the largest telco company, and purely civilian company. And that changed kind of 8 years ago, where from a civilian angle, we were approaching the coming of 5G technology, the 5th generation of mobile networks that were coming with huge promises, some people being scared from radiation and buying tinfoil hats and all that. And one of the problems for us as a company was that the 5G was not needed. So everybody was screaming about it, but no one has seen it. So we actually, and this is the first wireless communication standard that is not meant for you as humans. It's more meant for industry, for robots, and so since no one has seen it, so we realized that for anybody to actually buy it and so we could get back our investment, we actually need to build strong innovation leg to actually showcase and experiment. So what is the use of 5G technology, which coincided with great happening back in NATO, which has for many decades has been intentionally abstained from usage of civilian technology in the military operations, which coincided with that in many theaters around the world, that it was visible that adversaries are using very cheap technology to actually attack our forces. So the 5G is one of the earliest big motions also on the NATO side, is how to turn to usage of civilian communication technology in for the tactical and the military needs. So somehow we were lucky enough to jump on that train. So we have the oldest and biggest 5G military testbed in Europe. We are housing friendly both Nokia and Ericsson under one roof, and then they are kind of brothers in arms, if I may say. So that has given also, we are housing the largest digital backbone experimentation together with our friends in NATO ACT, happening actually this year again at this very moment. And it's the ambition of NATO is it actually possible to if all the allies come with their own communication equipment, can you join it and make it as a single network for any particular theater or geography, which we are actually doing. So we can, the 5G technology is beautiful in the sense that that's a single brain that can control both private networks, tactical field networks, satellite communication, and doing all the beautiful stuff. So we've been conducting training managed from network here in Riga, but that is happening in Idaho, in the United States of America. So that's actually possible. That's the competence that we've built from a historical perspective of a civilian company, but by having this technological ambition, and a very important ingredient was to embedding military officers within our company, hiring those officers and making them our colleagues actually gave us opened the portal to understanding actual vocabulary used by military as a customer. One additional aspect to that is also we realize that what is the benefit, also coming back to your question about small countries. Of course, we don't have that much money, but we are much faster. So why are we having this cooperation with NATO, ACT, or United States Department of Defense? Is because we are actually, I don't know, for instance, to conduct the jamming experiment, that would take a year in the United States to actually make all the agreements with Federal Aviation Authority and many others. So we can do this in weeks or even less. So that gives the speed. Plus, we also can export a lot of urgency. Sense of urgency is one of our capital, and of course, direct link to Ukrainian companies, which somehow feel that they kind of and we do understand them, and they do understand us better. So there's also we were seeing great flow of competence coming into our ecosystem from there. So that's very shortly about.
Excellent. And well, ACT was mentioned, so Nora, the path is wide open for you to tell us about NATO innovation. What is ACT? What does ACT do? What do you do? Yeah. What is NATO innovation? What are the structures?
There's a lot of questions.
A lot of questions, yes.
Okay, so my name is Nora. I'm with NATO ACT, Allied Command Transformation. So we're one of the two strategic commands. The other one is Allied Command Operations in Europe, shape Mons. The difference between us is, I would say that ACO is the one focusing on the current. Like what do I have available? Like what are our readiness? Like how can I deploy? What are the regional plans? While us as ACT, Allied Command Transformation, we look at the future, right? We're trying to understand what our potential capability needs, what would our allies or our nations need, what will our warfighters need, not only in terms of technology, but also in terms of training, lessons learned, policies, everything to actually enable our warfighters. Because NATO, we're talking about 1.2 billion people that we're trying to serve and protect. And that's quite a lot of it's a big task. That's why NATO has so many commands. If you ever wondered why we do have places everywhere, that's why. And I think among this panel, I'm probably the person with the least amount of money, I have to point out. Because it's always the conception, especially from industry, if I'm announcing myself as NATO ACT, industry wants to talk to me because they want to have money. I can't give you money, at least not a lot of money. I think ACT is in a specific position where our currency is more information, and as you mentioned, DIBACs, for example, exercises, where we provide industry but also nations access, the opportunity to test their developed solutions in a quite operational environment. DIBACs, we have CWIX, Coalition Warrior Interoperability Exercise, where we really see how industry solutions fit into the overarching NATO systems, right? Because that is really complicated. We have 32 nations, all of them with different communication protocols, all of them with different data formats, all of them with different kinds of systems. And that's absolutely okay. But as ACT, we focus on how do we ensure that we can connect those systems, and that needs industry to play along and come and play with us. Other than that, so we actually, I would say as ACT, we're looking at all the TRL levels, so technology readiness level. We have the STO organization, Science and Technology, who really focuses more on the future. What are the emerging technologies that will impact our current and future capabilities? So there we do low TRL experimentational validation. But then we have interoperability testing, so therefore you need a system that is already quite a little bit more mature. And that's also where Diana comes in, right? Diana helps those dual-use startups by providing small amounts of money, if I can compare it with you guys, to help them go a little bit farther in their TRL progression, but also guide them, because you mentioned the valley of death. And the value of death is quite deep for every startup, no matter where they operate, if it's in the commercial sector or any other thing. But it's significantly deeper within military. What we see is that for startups to actually make it to a full-blown capability delivered to a country or to an organization, they need a minimum of 2 to 4 years. So if you, for example, you participate in one of the great exercises, DIBACs, CWIX, or Task Force X, that also has been initiated by ACT, that can be considered a sign for the industry, oh, look, what I'm doing is working, so now the next step is automatically to get a big procurement contract. But that doesn't happen. It's not how it works. And that's why I'm putting back to the point that I'm saying as NATO, I'm not the big, or we are not the big spender. It's up to the nations again. And I think where we have to do better as governments and also the policymakers is to ensure that there is funding available to keep them afloat, but also ensure it becomes a capability and it does not stop at having a pilot or having a one unit fielded. Because that's not what industry wants, but it's also not what the military wants, because they want to have things to actually do their job.
If I may just ask you furthermore, just to say to the audience what calls or what activities are currently open that people can just look up on your website.
Yes. Actually, so because like you point out a good thing, as like industry or other nations or allies are wondering how can we actually work together with ACT? Well, first of all, you just, again, the same thing, just get in contact with us. If you go on our website right now, you find under contracting an opportunity for industry, which is a request for information on the topic that is in everybody's minds, which is counter UAS. So that's also why SACT Admiral Van Deer has put out the Beacon projects, and one of them is also Task Force X CUAS, which will be focusing on looking at the whole kill chain from detect, disrupt, destroy, potential drones, swarm of drones, Shaheds, or potential other things, and how we as nations can actually deter against those threats. So this is out right now. You can Google it, ACT, NATO ACT website, and you will find it right away.
Okay, so I'm going to sort of try to spin that specific example into a hypothetical story, and we're going to go through the panel and see what is possible in terms of financing of defense, investing in defense, and where the gaps are. So let's assume I'm interested. Let's assume I'm a capable dynamic startup. I have things to offer in terms of counter UAS. I join the project. I do some very nice experimentation with ACT. I get a badge. I put out a press release. I say, look at all the stuff I've learned. It's fantastic. But there's not a lot of money, or maybe even no money at all.
I'm not allowed to,
All right.
to talk about that one.
No, but it's an open call.
It's
you
open
said it's
call, so right now it's a request for information, and the next one we will see.
All right.
So
Okay, fair enough.
Let me not comment on that.
But you did say earlier that you don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
But we've actually seen this before. I mean, let's take any technology, not that particular technology. Like also, maybe why I'm actually here is because being also a big company in any particular economy also gives you some kind of responsibility or opportunity to actually build out ecosystem around you, because you cannot do everything. So there, we have a tradition actually reaching out for smaller tech companies, taking them on board for different kind of ambitions we're having here. So many small tech companies which are grown into defense have actually gone through our test bed and actually get some initial funding for actually doing these particular things, because there's this valley of death in a classical startup is simpler. I totally agree, because you potentially have a zillion of customers. Here it's just a single customer with super slow procurement cycle, which goes many years, and generals are also human, right? So they are not startup people, so they know what has worked before. So for them to embed these new technology in this 7 or 12 year procurement cycle is really hard. So therefore, this onboarding these small companies into actual testing and giving them possibility to show off is also showing to the generals and colonels and all the nice people that what is this actually doing, because generals do not tend to believe to PowerPoints very well, so they need some real gear.
Can I maybe add to that as well? I think in terms of, we have talked about today that there is capital now. It's more the industrial capacity and other things. And I think that the capital is there, but not necessarily for all parts of the value of the ecosystem, as you mentioned here. And I think what you just mentioned there about the incubators, so to speak, or the responsibilities, I think, or opportunities as well for the bigger players that also have the contracts with the national, for example, defense procurement organizations. I think the initial issue when we started trying to also finance this was that these that the contracts or the orders from those agencies were not kind of long enough. So how do you ramp up and scale up production and manufacturing if you need to finance that via maybe the banking system or so, but you need to show then that you have long-term contracts, that you can actually get a payback on those investments, and there I think the whole procurement chain is still kind of with those long contracts. You don't really invite these innovative companies and players that are. We have seen it in Ukraine. They are really needed because you need such quick turnover times as well. So to merge the two is, I think, super critical. And the banking system can basically help the combined package, not only the innovators. They need to find the contracts and the buyers. And so I think there are some other problems, not just about having capital, it's also how you actually disperse it.
The fundamentals behind it is, as I think in every modern warfare, technology changing so fast. Yes. I remember at the beginning of years, companies has been looking for optical fiber. Maybe somebody could produce 1 kilometer, 3 kilometers. Later on, that was 50 kilometers, and that was just in 6 months. Now, as we see interception drones, the experts said in beginning of next year there will be drone fights between each other and so on. So that's going so fast, and of course. If you look at how the Latvia is structuring the financing system, one is Ministry of Defense, mostly providing money for sandboxes and incubators. That's number one, and then then we see some kind of viable product appears or service. Then we have the mix of blended finance and loan guarantees. That is some kind of risk sharing mechanisms for. Okay, you never know what will happen, but if the technology is interesting, then we have trying to somehow share risks and blend finance. Then next block of instruments, that is bridging instruments between where we want to ensure continuity of funding between research and procurement, what's already mentioned, because again when it's come to procurement issues and taking account there is some conservatism around the procurement people, then they would like to have a strong evidence. This is serious or this is good. Then we really have to how to bridge this period, and of course innovation funds and accelerators. What already mentioned, that is from our startup ecosystem, and this is. Again, it sounds simple, but most complicated part is really accelerators, where you really have to help for companies to how to say scale up product. Yeah, that's the structure what Latvia have.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I'll give you the floor in a second. But to be fair, there's still quite a cliff edge, right? I mean, until you get a large procurement contract from an MOD. There's still a difficult path along that. So I'd like to ask the panel just to address that part, because I see a lot happening for startups. I see, yes, accelerators, incubators, etc. But there's still that part before you get your first break, your first real serious MOD, DOD contract, and that's not simple. So maybe Nora first.
Yeah, actually, I want to point it out. I think we do have the innovation ecosystem, especially for the lower TRL levels and up to 6+, so fully functional or 8. There's military innovation accelerators in every nation, 32 nations. I think the US has over 180 entities focusing on military innovation. So we do have the ecosystem. But again, we're always focusing on, I have now something that works on the front line, or it works something that has been battlefield tested. But now what? Right, so there's the industry, they're out there like screaming literally, like, I've been tested, I've went to this exercise, and it works. So now what? And I think there we don't have, especially in NATO, we don't have the policy or the framework to continue. It stops there somehow, right? And that's where I think is the deepest cliff for those companies to actually get over it. And I honestly don't know, because I'm not from the investment side, so I don't know how venture capital could potentially help. Because at the end, it's still the nations that have to decide on which capability, which technology, which solution they procure. And also NATO cannot mandate any of that. We can make recommendations, we're already doing this. but we cannot tell a nation what to buy. So I think that it's up for the nations to find ways, policies, frameworks to accelerate this particular part, which is from one unit fielded to an actual capability, meaning the supply chain is secured, I have the capacity coming out of those startups, I have the logistics support, I have O&M support, so it's actually a capability. So I think there is a lot of things that we still have to improve. The Ukrainians do it really well, but they're under a lot of pressure for obvious reasons.
But again and again, I mean, therefore, this possibility for testing stuff, it's not it's not for marketing it is for marketing, but of course, and for knowledge. But you actually that's a ground where actually actual military people meet actual innovators, because they need to see that. And also all these instruments, also Europe is having, also us as a large enterprise, we are also very active participant for European Defense Fund as an instrument, because also my shareholders, they are also not that patient. So actually for us to build up this military muscle, we are very actively participating in EDFs, because for us it took like 4 years before we got our first contract. It's not easy for a startup. We are an enterprise, we can survive many years, but for a startup that's not possible.
I fully agree, and I think this experimentation is crucial, right? It's essential. But what I'm saying, how often do we see contracting officers or procurement officers or legal at those exercises? Because they are not the decision makers. So I have the warfighters, we have the warfighters at DIBEX and CWIX, but we don't have the decision makers. So, and the problem is, everybody who's involved in making a procurement decision, that's contracting managers, that is program officers, that's budget responsibilities, then you have the people who own the requirements, and then you have actual operators. They all speak a different language. Sure. So if you can get those together quite early and then drag them through the process to experimentation, you can probably get there.
Just one odd little thing on this. You know what helps Latvians?
Yes.
We have a two procurement system present in here. That's Ukrainian and a NATO system. Yeah, and sometimes Ukrainian evaluation of the product helps a hell lot to make a decision.
We're going to have to wrap up very soon. I'm just going to take a couple of questions or comments from the audience. I think Artis Pabriks may have a comment or question.
Yeah, thank you. Artis Pabriks, among others, representing Latvian Drone and Robotics Industry Association.
Your microphone.
If there's a microphone, yes, there we are. Yeah.
Thank you, Artis Pabriks, among others, representing Latvian Drone and Robotics Association industry. There are a number of relevant questions. I will start with one easy one. Because you see, military industry from other industries is different because it cannot function in free market. We are dependent on government, and that makes this panel very important, because otherwise we simply would go to the shop and we would sell whatever we want. We can't do this. Now, some 10 years ago, European Union and member countries decided that because of energy crisis, we need energy reserves, 3 months, oil, gas, etc. Now we see that if the real war will start, or where we are in the intermediate war, we definitely need also strategic reserves for military industry. Obviously, Minister of Finance would scream if we would ask him also to sponsor all the reserves, what is needed for each and every country. So is European Union or somebody else ready to invest in this so that industry can keep strategic reserve for the necessary times? Because who will pay for that? That's a question. We cannot go to the free market for that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll maybe gather a couple and then we'll just go right through very quickly. No? Okay. No. Prohibited. Okay. Well, that was an extremely interesting discussion. Thank you very much. I think we should give a hand to the panelists. Thank you very much for your participation. And we go to the next session.
You have time to answer?